Thank you, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Intentwise Connect webinars. We're thrilled to have Michael, the Chief Idea Officer at Cartology, with us here today. And we're going to cover some basics about sponsored display, some advanced strategies about, all of the other ad types other than sponsored products. And the key driver for today's session was a lot of data that we pulled from Intentwise anonymous data sources saying that over 80% of sponsored products, all of 80% of all sponsored search spend on Amazon is still being directed towards sponsored products. And this is a fact that has sort of remained true over the last maybe 5-10 years of Amazon sponsored ads. And so we're going to dig into why that's happening and what opportunities exist with the other 20% that advertisers are spending and what you should be doing with sponsored display and sponsored brands. So with that being said, before we just jump into the presentation, I'll let Michael introduce himself here in a minute. I want to give a quick background on Intentwise and what we do in case you haven't heard about us. Intentwise is a software provider in the Amazon and Walmart space. We help hundreds of the largest brands and agencies on Amazon and Walmart to manage their business and grow their business for their clients. And we do that by offering 3 technology solutions. First is Intentwise Ad Optimizer, which is a system that allows you to use rules and AI to optimize your bids across these retail media channels. We have Intentwise Analytics Cloud, which is a out-of-the-box reporting solution, allows you to connect to all of the APIs, including the new ones released by Amazon, download and connect your data together and have beautiful visualizations and reports within minutes. And then our most recent product launch which is Intentwise Explore. This is built on top of Amazon Marketing Cloud, allowing you to build audiences and get insights from AMC without needing to write SQL. So if you have an interest in learning more about Intentwise or what we do, check out our website and subscribe to our newsletter. And without further ado, I will let Michael go ahead and introduce himself and his company and get to the balance of today's presentation.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me. My name is Michael Marr. Like you said, I'm the Chief Idea Officer of Cartology. We are a full channel management agency for Amazon specifically. And our focus is to really drive results for clients and to provide them with the best possible service. I know a lot of people have what I will call agency hurt, both people working there, but also people that have worked with agencies. And our goal is to just provide the opposite experience of what maybe you have had. So really high level of service, but also get your results at the same time. I'm really excited to go through all of this with everyone and just talk more about the other 20%. I wish I could take credit for that title, but technically I cannot. Yeah, when you said the other 20%, I was like, wait, there's something else other than sponsored products. But we're going to talk all about driving results with sponsored brands and sponsored display. And the thing I want to just get out from the get-go is we're always going to need to spend on multiple ad types. I just want to give you some insight into how you can use some of these other ad types and maybe demystify that a little bit. We'll talk about got some data from Intentwise, which is super helpful. I've also talked with Amazon and AEs there and gotten some randomized data as well. And it looks like, depending upon the category, 80 to 90% of spend on Amazon, at least from a search perspective, is on sponsored products. You're going to need sponsored products. We know that we want to be visible natively, but I do think that there are other options out there, and we'll talk more about how to actually tactically use those as well. 50% of spend is on keywords specifically, so not product targeting. So I think that product attribute targeting on Amazon actually is a big opportunity as well, because majority of spend is not there. That's a smaller percentage as well, and that's part of the tactics that I'll talk about later. There's also, just looking at CPC, there's more competition, I feel like, in the sponsored product space. 94 cents cost per click for sponsored products, 76 for brands, sponsored brands, excuse me, and 87 cents for sponsored display. Why do we use sponsored products? I have a couple of theories, and one of the reasons is they're super familiar. So they are the most consistent ad product on the search side since Amazon released ads back in 2012. We know it. It's easy to use. I feel more familiar with it, and so therefore I default to that ad type. We also know that it impacts search results. We spend money on ads, especially sponsored products, keyword targeting, in order to increase our sales velocity so that we can show up higher organically long term, which is why we have metrics like tacos. We're looking at our ad spend compared to our total sales. And that's really the gold standard, is showing up high natively on Amazon. I also believe that the keyword focus versus audience base is a little bit audience-based targeting. It just feels a little bit more comfortable. And sponsored brands and sponsored display, they're not fully, DSP. Sponsored display is, very similar to DSP in some regards. DSP is a lot more powerful in some of its targeting capabilities, but that to me feels a little bit uncomfortable. And so again, I want to kind of crawl back into my shell and focus on what I know best, but that also means that there's a little bit of saturation there in that area too. What are some of the objections that people have to running sponsored brands as sponsored display? One I hear all the time, and this is from novices to ad experts alike, is you're just going to waste your money. You're going to waste your money on sponsored display and sponsored brands. So you're going to squander resources if you don't spend on anything other than sponsored products. I should have put sponsored display there, but anyway, upper funnel, it's not as targeted as sponsored products. We want to, drive those search results. And honestly, I think we just don't understand them. There's a lack of comprehension about how they work, what targeting looks like, and honestly, what the benefits are. And I think if you see some of the benefits that come from this, you're going to have a little bit more hope about actually using these ad types instead of feeling like you're going in blind. They're just not sponsored products, so we don't use them. But at a certain point, sponsored products was also not sponsored products. It was a brand new ad solution. I remember selling, I've been in the e-commerce space since 2010, and I remember selling on Amazon when I got access to the ad portal. It was like 2014, I want to say. And man, it was some of those campaigns I can go back and look at now. They were very basic. They were very single keyword, but the ACoS was incredible. And there was a lot of stuff that just didn't make sense at the time that now I get, but you had to embrace it at some point. Some of the data that Intentwise was able to share with me that I was super thankful for. Sponsored display has the lowest ACoS and highest ROAS, just looking at some of that randomized data. So 8.39 return on ad spend. I believe that that's part of the targeting capabilities that are there. So looking at retargeting or remarketing and getting people to come back and purchase once they've looked at your product. I think that's part of the reason why that is, but it also has a high conversion rate at 23% versus sponsored products, which has average of 14%. Sponsored brands have the lowest CPC at 76 cents a click, and sponsored products have 83% of spend. That's including automatic keyword and product targeting. I drill down a little bit more. So sponsored display has the smallest amount of ad spend. It also appears to have the smallest amount of ad revenue, but has a really high conversion rate. So that feels like an opportunity to me. Anytime I see things that don't match up, especially as an advertiser's mind, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do with this information and turn it into something that actually generates more revenue? Sponsored products, 83% of spend, 81% of revenue, conversion rate, 14%. I'm not saying it's a bad conversion rate, but I just see opportunity when I see something like sponsored display. Sponsored products, if you break down based on automatic keyword and product targeting, keyword targeting gets 50% of spend, conversion rate at 19%, and product targeting only has 14% of spend, and the conversion rate is 17%. I feel like there's a big opportunity to utilize sponsored products product targeting or product attribute targeting and sponsor display together. So that's part of what we're going to talk about too. Why should you use sponsored brands and sponsored display other than me just telling you that you should do it? Well, there's a lot of open inventory, a lot of spots, and a lot of placement. Just looking at CPC, there's less competition, but there's plenty of conversion rate to be there. Now, an argument could be, okay, well, there's less impressions, less clicks, less spend, so the conversion rate is of course going to be higher than sponsored products. Okay, sure, I think that's valid, but also, what if you actually got into that pool and spent and got that conversion rate or something close? Even if it's comparable to sponsored products and it drops down to 14%, it's still another ad type that you can lean into. It's a great opportunity to acquire new customers. There is spend on some of these ad products that are incremental that you would not get. You would not get that sale if it weren't for being in that specific spot. And one of the things I love to do is be able to show up on a competitor's page where you feel like, hey, we can actually win here. It also gives you an opportunity to defend your brand and cross-sell too. I also think the ad diversity piece is huge. People are used to sponsored products. People are used to native search results. Give them something that has different creative capabilities, something that allows them to explore more of your brand. And that's just something that sponsored products can't provide right now. Who knows, maybe in the future. But for now, we even in the product attribute targeting, what your product listing is, that's what your ad's going to be. A couple of examples that I like to call out, both of these are on the product detail page. So the sponsored brands placement is at the bottom of the page. But if someone is already in the consideration phase of looking for omega-3 fish oils, well, now they get to see your brand here if you're being targeted in your approach. And even if there's a little bit more exploration that's happening here, it's not quite low funnel, they're already in consideration. You can compel them to click on this ad. You have a greater likelihood, I believe, of getting them to convert that they would not have known about you had they just clicked on this product page and then sat there and had no other options. You also get an opportunity to show up on the right-hand side where you look at sponsored display. You can show up under the buy box. You can show up under the product listing above the fold still. And this is actually a Nordic Naturals listing that I pulled. So they are defending their space really well. It's a great opportunity to cross-sell or to keep competitors off your page. So the same things that we're going to talk about doing for other competitors, you can actually do that to defend your space. Here's how you can very quickly determine, am I spending too much on sponsored products? That is a relative term. So overspend, if you're getting good results, great. Like, you don't need to necessarily mess with something. However, if you feel like you can get something better or experiment, which is a big part of advertising on Amazon, I think you should go for it. Analyzing spend and performance just means looking at all your ad types and breaking down spend based on percent, ad revenue, percentage, and then conversion rate. It's very easy to do this inside of Intentwise. I have done it. Really allows me to dice and slice the data how I need to, but very quickly I can roll stuff up and see things even at a product level if I want to across all kinds of campaigns. Then you evaluate the effectiveness of your strategy. If 80% or more of your spend specifically on keyword targeting, I think it's a time to adjust your ad mix. And then really just identify opportunities. You look for new opportunities based on doing really targeted research. That is a big key component here, and just being very intentional about what you're doing. And then also just start experimenting. Anyone that says they've got ads all figured out, Amazon all figured out, is either Jeff Bezos, I don't even know if he has it all figured out, but is blowing smoke. There is a lot of experimentation that happens on Amazon on the ad side. There's really good educated guesses that go into a lot of the work that we do, but it can still result in good performance when you're monitoring it well. Let's talk about determining ad mix. These are really your ad types. I'm not going to go into super detail on this, but you've got sponsored products, you've got sponsored brands, sponsored display, sponsored TV if you got access to it in the ad console on the search side, and then DSP as well. When you look at sponsored products, we know Amazon chooses automatic targeting. You get to choose on the manual side. And so most people are picking that keyword where 50% of spend is going towards, but there is product at a category and individual product level that I think speaks volumes to the potential for some of these ad types. Sponsored brands, keyword and product targeting similarities there. Sponsored displays where it starts to get a little bit more dicey. We start to focus more dicey, meaning stepping away from keyword-based targeting. But we're getting into some more lifestyle stuff. We're getting into in-market. We're looking at remarketing. And then we can do really contextual stuff. So looking at categories, looking at individual products, and really going hard after those with the different ad types that you have. Sponsored TV is going to go lifestyle, interest, and in-market. And then DSP, for anyone that's not running DSP, I think it's a great opportunity for you to diversify your ad strategy. It allows you to get off Amazon as well, which sponsored display does too, but DSP has some really powerful targeting capabilities. You can go more awareness and consideration based. I really love the retargeting feature, something that we've done, or the retargeting capabilities, I should say. What we've done at Cartology is anyone who's maybe newer to DSP, we're going to start them out with a really focused retargeting campaign to make sure that we're bringing people back in. It has a really good return on ad spend most of the time. We can start building awareness from there. And running DSP gets you access to things like AMC. You can create an AMC instance, and you can build a custom audience with that. I think the part of the reason why maybe we don't run as many sponsored brands or sponsored display is targeting is off. So we need to find a way to improve targeting. And here are my suggestions for doing it. And this is part of my approach and my team's approach for going out to get good targeting. It starts with really good research. So just doing keyword research for, let's say you're selling probiotics. Just going and looking at probiotics, determining what the keywords are, and then going out and targeting that, that's not enough with how vast Amazon is and how competitive it is. So you need to look at a category level, go to the top 100 in the main category, go to the top 100 in the subcategories that you're in, and really look at who are the big players in the space and maybe why. Do they have a great brand? Have they been on the space for a while? And don't be afraid to look at the smaller pieces of the category, the smaller subcategories, and start to think about winning there first. Know who your direct competitors are off and on Amazon, and analyze those competitors to say, hey, are we relevant to them from a product standpoint? Do we have similar volume to them, and know your position better? Look at their lead products, evaluate the volume of those products, look at their ratings, look at their performance to determine viability. What I mean by viability is if you're going to run some sponsored display contextual targeting, you want to know if that product has enough visitors to the page. And if there's not a lot of sales volume, there's not a lot of visitors. And so you're going to be disappointed if you end up sending traffic to that page and don't really get many results. And you're going to be mad at me too, which I don't want. I mean, you can be mad at me, but I'd prefer if you're not. Think about creating strategy. I'm thinking about spend buckets. Where are we putting our spend? I try to simplify this as much as possible, but what do you want to rank on? We all know there are terms we want to rank on, but it goes beyond just sponsored products, which we'll get to. But where do you feel like you can actually compete? Again, don't be afraid to start small there. What are we going to spend on in the category? So who are competitors? What categories do we want to go after as you get into more audience insight data using AMC, but also looking at some of your DSP audience insights? You can also talk with your ad executive or account executive on the ads department, and they can give you audience insights depending upon what access they have. And you can say, hey, what other categories are people shopping in when they purchase our product? You can look at market basket analysis and brand analytics and determine what people are adding to cart and purchasing. There's a lot of opportunities, but I would say start with your main category. People are already in that aisle. Brand. Some people say spend on brand, some people don't. I think you're always going to have to spend on brand in some capacity, but you do want to test it, and it's going to depend upon where you're at. Are you new to market? Yeah, you're probably going to want to spend on brand to defend that, especially if other people have been advertising in those spots. If you also have a brand category term, an example of that would be like a Yeti tumbler or Kleenex. People just go and search Kleenex. Maybe they buy puffs, maybe they want puffs, but they're thinking of it as a Kleenex that's kind of become a category term. Kleenex is very likely going to want to spend a lot of money on that to defend that space because they want to be the brand that people purchase when they search for Kleenex. And then discovery. There's always going to be some discovery that's in those campaigns. And if you're not testing things, you're not looking at new things and being willing to fail at those, I think you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. And so I would encourage you to set up discovery campaigns. Then this is an opportunity to hit them up with all these different ad types. By hit them up, I mean, I'm talking about your competitors going after people that are leading the space. So I love to use product attribute targeting to show up on competitor pages. When you don't get a click, that's not the only opportunity. You can now show up in product attribute targeting on the product detail page, but also someone searching for that specific product, you can show up in search results as well there too. I love contextual targeting on the sponsored display side. Sponsored displays are very powerful. I like to use them for remarketing. Those can be really powerful, but contextual targeting is great because I can get really specific and then start to what I will call overwhelm the product detail page. I also want to use sponsored brands to reinforce my brand. When someone searches for a rank keyword, let's say we're going after, double walled tumbler. If I'm running a sponsored product, if I also show up in a sponsored brand, there is now increased brand familiarity, and I have data to support that more ad views of different ad types actually result in a greater conversion. I also want to think about maximizing control. When I think about maintaining control over bidding and budget, if I want to rank on a term, I'm talking about a single term and a couple of ASINs. Maybe I test those and then I get it down to one. And same with if I'm running a sponsored display contextual targeting campaign, I'm looking at who's my competitor and what is their product type. If I sell kitchenware and I'm going after a competitor that sells utensils but also pots and pans, I'm going to focus specifically on each category of product if I want to test. So I can look at a very high level, is this campaign working or not? I'm naming it with simple naming conventions. I'm not adding, ASIN dash dash dash. If you want to put ASIN in there, that's fine. But I don't think most people have their ASINs memorized. And so I like to look at it at a high level and be able to see, is this working or is this not working? I would highly encourage using bid modifiers and having more control over the bids, especially when you have a very specific focus. So if I'm wanting to rank, maybe I want to increase my top of search placement. If I'm trying to rank, I don't really care about showing up elsewhere other than top of search, because that's where most people are not going past anyway. Maybe I'm looking at bidding specifically on a product detail page for a competitor. And so I'm going to use the PP bid increase to appear on more PDPs. Or if I'm using, running a sponsored brand and I'm trying to couple it with a rank term, I'm going to increase or decrease placements that are not top of search. The other thing to think about with the campaign segmentation too, that I didn't mention, that I think is important to mention, I see this happen all the time with brands that I audit, but they put so many keywords inside of one campaign. 50, 100, 200. I've seen 999. I've seen so many keywords in a campaign. And the problem with doing that is, if you think about putting 100 keywords inside of a campaign, and let's say you give it $100 a day budget, okay? You are now limiting each keyword. If the average CPC is about $1 for sponsored products, you're limiting each keyword to 1 click. Most people are not going to get 100% conversion rate. So 1 click for the term is not enough. And in reality, Amazon's ad algorithm is optimizing those. So what gets more impressions, what gets more clicks is going to start to show, and you're going to have keywords that don't ever show up. So segmentation is really, really important here. And I think if brands could do one thing, it's better segment their campaigns and at least know what's working and what's not. And then I believe in negating your brand. If you're going to target something more broad or phrase match, negate your brand, be really focused. People put, and agencies do this all the time, but put brand terms inside of other campaigns or branded targets and improves the ROAS and makes you feel artificially good. Don't do that. Segment your stuff so that you can be super focused and know, hey, this rank campaign is a 1-to-1. I'm okay with that because I want to rank on the term, but I also know that I'm not getting artificial hope because my branded terms are in there. I've got 2 case studies to talk about these strategies at work that I feel like are to help give you some contextual information. More than happy to answer questions on these too. So like Ryan said, put them in the chat. He can interject and answer something specifically, and we can talk about this at the end as well too. And we had a new launch 6 months ago, and they were in this brand was in the patio lawn and garden sector. Really high competition in this sector. There was a lot of seasonality too. You can imagine patio lawn and garden, very summer focused, although there's winter stuff that would show up there too. But there's a crowded market. There was lots of other sellers in the space. There were copycat and knockoff products and still are. And so that dictated what our strategy looked like. And we had 6 months to really gain visibility before the season hit. And we are in season now. Here's some of the results that we got. 5.86 million in revenue, starting from 0. We got a 3-to-1 return on ad spend across all ad types. We have the best seller in 2 subcategories, have had and continue to fluctuate in and out of those, but we win those badges frequently. 77% of the orders were new to brand. We've got a part of the component of this is a renewable product, so I'm not expecting it all to be new. But when I do look at brand metrics in the ad console, I can see that overall 90% of our sales are new to brands, which is on par with the category. And we do want to acquire more new to brand consumers. And by March 31st, we were able to get 150 lead terms in the category that were not branded, that were top clicked and converted on. And this brand does have somewhat of a branded category term like Yeti Tumbler, like I talked about before. And anyone that was selling this product before, all resellers that were not authorized, all the terms previously that were top clicked and converted on were branded only. Here was a revenue impact. So incremental from sponsored brands, sponsored display, DSP. When I'm thinking of incremental, I'm really just thinking of anything that's outside of search that wouldn't result necessarily in an organic ad or something that would be sponsored products focused in search results. 24% of our ad spend was there. 18% of the ad revenue came from there. 11% of our total revenue was there. We had a 2-to-1 ROAS. DSP was somewhat awareness based, and so we did focus on that, and that brought probably some of that return on ad spend down. But again, I'm not just looking at return on ad spend. That's not the only metric here. I'm looking at overall sales. I'm looking at placement in the market, and then obviously seeing something like a bestseller tells me that I'm doing well in that category. We also used a lot of product attribute targeting. So that was 36% of our spend. That resulted in 30% of our ad revenue, or $1.1 million. It was 19% of total revenue and a 2.62 ROAS. And then keyword contribution. We spent 45% of our budget on keywords. Like I said, you're still going to need to do that. You still need to optimize those. And I'm even leaning into the product attribute side, but it was 30% of our revenue and 3.37 return on ad spend. You're still going to need that. I'm not saying get rid of it. There's just other options. Here's why I believe AMC is super important, and why I think I can't speak for Intentwise, but I think why they've leaned into this is because we now have more information in Amazon Marketing Cloud that allows us to be focused with our targets and to really better understand path to purchase and impact. There is way more that can be done here, and the sky's kind of the limit. And I think as time goes along, we're going to start to see brands, we're going to start to see agencies hopefully get really targeted once they get enough data and how they go about going after that consumer. So in AMC, the things that I'm looking at right now, ad type overlay. So we look at all the different ad types and we see them on their own and then used in conjunction with each other, and we get varying reach and conversion rates. You can use an ad type alone and drive conversions, but how effectively are you doing that? When I look across multiple ad types, I see higher conversion rates, and to me, that means greater brand familiarity. I'm also looking at assisted conversion. So your return on ad spend does not tell the whole story. Amazon is last click attribution model. If you get a click on a sponsored display and then someone clicks on sponsored products and someone converts, you now get the attribution on your sponsored product, and it looks like your sponsored display didn't get the sale, when in reality it helped or assisted.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A that are on this topic about attribution, specifically with VCPM campaigns for sponsored display. How does the view attribution on those campaigns impact this analysis? And do you feel that VCPM campaigns are sometimes taking credit for organic sales or sales that they otherwise maybe didn't actually influence?
When I'm looking at, I try to look at what I'm doing from a targeting perspective and where do I feel like the setup of that campaign is going to make the most sense. And so a lot of what I've done is look at using CPC basis still for sponsored display and allow the VCPM to be a part of the DSP aspect. But also, I kind of don't care what ends up getting the contribution. If I can see at a view level, when someone viewed multiple ad types, it increased conversion rate, I'm not going to be as upset if this campaign got credit versus this other campaign. And that's why I think looking at it holistically makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'll just add that in case you're not familiar with how sponsored display VCPM works, basically as long as the ad is shown, 50% of the pixels of the ad itself are visible on screen for at least 1 second, Amazon counts that as a view. And if there were no other ad touches, meaning no clicks on any other ad types or views of any other view through attribution ad types, that campaign could receive credit for a sale if somebody were to buy that product.
I think the thing that we might be missing too in thinking about that is, okay, maybe someone could have purchased your product organically, but was there greater brand familiarity because they saw that ad and now they're looking for your product or they're seeing your product? Like something we've looked at recently with the ad team at Amazon is, okay, we're running streaming TV ads for a brand. How many branded searches are those showing? Like, are those creating? Are we also showing up with similar items for those branded searches so that we have that increased brand familiarity? So I feel like you could test and experiment with that, but the more people see of your brand, the more likely I think they are to convert.
100%. And to your point too, you can use AMC to really prove this out. That this is exactly what the path to conversion query in AMC shows you. It'll show every single time that somebody was exposed to a sponsored display ad, if they viewed it, if they clicked it, if there were other things that happened before or after that exposure. So really the best way to understand how sponsored display, whether you're using VCPM or click-based attribution, best way to understand how it's impacting the journey is through AMC. Anyways, thank you, Michael. I'll let you get back to the slide here.
No problem. I appreciate you stopping me. And there's always more to explore. And I would just say test yourself. Like run something, turn it off, see the impact. But honestly, I really feel like ads are selling organically on Amazon. It's a team sport. It is not, the Michael Jordan only. Like Michael Jordan was great. I'm not a sports aficionado, but Michael Jordan was great because of Scottie Pippen, because of Dennis Rodman. He had a kick-ass team. And so leaning into a strong team is what I think actually makes the most sense here. If you look, this is all view-based data, so keep that in mind. I know a lot of times we look at click-based for something like sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display, but I wanted to look at view-based and also include DSP in the mix there because we are running DSP for this client. So you can see, I won't get into every single detail, but with sponsored products, sponsored brands, and sponsored display, from a view base, we were able to reach a decent amount of people, 2 million with these different ad types, but the conversion rate is pretty low. Again, from a view basis, the actual actual ad conversion rate from a click standpoint is higher. But when we combine all these ad types together, or when someone sees all these ad types together, the conversion rate goes up significantly. Now, the reach is down. If I go back and look at sponsored products, okay, yeah, there's 1.8 million people reached, so of course the conversion rate is going to be lower. But we also had more conversions on these campaigns where they were run together and people saw them together. Conversion rate was higher. We got new to brand conversions, and a good amount of new to brand conversions. But to me, that says greater familiarity with the brand. So people are hitting them in multiple types. So if the sponsored brand ends up getting the attribution, or the sponsored display gets attribution, I kind of don't care at that point, because now it has to make sense from a unit economic standpoint. Don't get me wrong, but if I'm seeing them see multiple ad types and then convert, and I can get down to a level where I say, okay, this was branded, this was non-branded, that I think is kind of next level. That to me tells me that I'm in the right direction. I'm heading in the right direction. We got 10 million views for DSP over this time period, and honestly, we're only running DSP for like the last half of that. And this data is a Q1 only basis, so keep that in mind. Whereas the success data was based on a 6-month period. But conversion rate is super, super low. When you combine DSP with these other search-based ad types, we got higher conversion rates, 7.36% when you add in sponsored products and sponsored brands with DSP, 9.8% when you added in sponsored products and sponsored display with DSP, and 22% when all ad types were used together. Greater brand familiarity, getting people to come back and even search for the brand. That to me is a really big win. And so if one of the items gets attribution versus the other, you have to have unit economics make sense. So you can't, overspend and not be profitable for, a long period of time. But being able to spend and get greater brand familiarity, increase conversions to ultimately become a bestseller in your category is a win. This is the data ranked by conversion. So most conversions were with all ad types, and then 14,000 conversions came from sponsored products and sponsored brands, and then ranked based on conversion rate. Assisted versus last conversions, I think, is also interesting because people were talking about, campaigns getting attribution versus something organic, but also are we looking at which ad type is assisting and which ad types are getting the actual conversion? I think that's a really important information to look at. And again, helps me feel more comfortable about what I'm spending on some of these ad types. When we look across these assisted conversions for this brand, sponsored products have the highest assisted conversions, total conversions and value. Sponsored brands as well, of course, where a lot of budget went to. Sponsored brands had a really high assisted and last interaction conversion, and sponsored display led in assisted and last interaction conversion ratio. This is what this screenshot looks like. I'm going to move to a little bit more pulled out view, but sponsored products gave us 1.2 million in assisted conversion value and 1.1 in last interaction conversion value. And when I look at that assisted to last interaction conversion ratio, where it says 1.10, Anything over a 1 means it assisted more sales than it got final attribution for. Anything under 1 would mean it got more last interaction, and 1 to 1 would be, even. Sponsored brands, for every conversion that it actually got attribution for, it assisted with 10 others, essentially. So 11 to 1 ratio. Sponsored display was 27. And we were really specific on retargeting, but also going after some knockoffs here as well. And then DSP assisted more than it actually converted last interaction. We look at that total last conversion value. So the last conversion value over that period of time within the first quarter, and it was actually the AMC instance didn't get set up until later because DSP was running a little bit later. But there was 113,000 in value of last, so actual attributed sales to those ad types that were not sponsored products. We ran a little bit of streaming TV ads that got started later as well, so there's not a lot of data information there. But all these ad types that were not sponsored products assisted in $880,000 worth of sales. That to me, again, is a big win and makes me feel comfortable about the spend. One more case study for you, and then we can start getting into some questions, some Q&A, or whatever Ryan wants to throw my way. I'm happy to chat about. And a more mature brand that was it's been with us for 5-6 years. They're in the office product space. They are a luxury item, but they've had moderate growth in kind of an unsexy category overall. They put a lot of effort into the D2C side. Their item is a luxury item, so it has a higher AOV, 247% higher than the page 1 average, just for the generic item that they're selling. And they've really been search focused, so just that Amazon.com audience only. And we wanted to expand from that. So not quite as big of a brand as the brand before, but in a 6-month period, we're able to get them $465,000 of revenue, which was up 81% year over year. Again, we started to invest more into Amazon to help them to grow. And they are profitable on here. This is their most profitable channel, has been for a long time. And this is despite seeing increase in fees on the Amazon side, spending more on the ad side, still very profitable. They saw a 10%, 11% increase their AOV. Overall, the return on ad spend was 2.53, and the conversion rate on sponsored display was 35%. We launched DSP with them. That accounted for 7% of ad revenue, about 5% of total revenue. Incremental impact, we saw 27% of spend go to, we did a lot on the sponsored display side, but go to anything outside of sponsored products. That accounted for 40% of ad revenue and 30% of total revenue with a 3.24 ROAS. The sponsored display contribution, 12% of spend, 13% of spend, 24% of ad revenue, 18% of total revenue. So just pulling that out with a 4.7 ROAS. And we did run a mixture of CPC and CPM based VCPM based campaigns, excuse me. We did still spend, again, a good amount on keyword contribution. And this is a brand that is dealing with, they don't have the highest ratings. They've had some problems with some of their products, since we've been helping them combat that, but really focused on helping them to drive, again, organically, because they've had some other people come into the space. Loving that with AMC, sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display, conversion rates really low. In some cases, when people only saw sponsored brand, the conversion rate was 0 over this period of time. There was not, honestly, there's a lot more spending going to sponsored display for this brand than sponsored brands themselves. But you add all those together, more conversions than even sponsored products alone, a 1.41% conversion rate. A DSP reached about 1 million people, very low conversion rate when people view that alone. But again, putting DSP with these other ad types resulted in a much higher conversion rate. That's my whole point here, and this has been consistent with every brand I've seen. I can't say it's going to be that way all the time, but I do feel like, based on what I'm seeing here, the more people see your brand, the more familiar they become with it. And if you've got a good product offering, it always starts with that. If you have a crap product, people are not going to want to purchase your product. So just keep that in mind. Don't get as attached to your products would be my recommendation. Figure out what works, what doesn't work. If someone's complaining about something, improve the product. This client has had some complaints about some products. we've passed that back to them and they've gone to the manufacturing to work on improving it. We've done things on the product detail page to get ahead of something that, like, hey, you may not like this pen if this is what your desired thing that you're going after is. So ranked by conversions, the conversion rate, most conversions, came from DSP, sponsored products, and sponsored display together. But then again, ranked based on total conversion rate, DSP, sponsored products, sponsored display, sponsored brands, was the winner there. Assisted versus last. If I pull this out, sponsored products still assisted more than it got last interaction conversion value for. Sponsored brands was about the same, and you can see there's not a ton of spend in there. Sponsored display assisted, almost twice as much as it got conversions, and DSP was 1.52. When I pull those values out, total last conversion was about 25,000 for any ad type outside of sponsored products, but it was about double that, 54,000 in total assisted conversion value. That's what I got for you today, at least for the presentation side. If you do want to reach out to me, michael@thinkcartology.com, I'd love to hear from you. If you're a brand that's struggling with issues on the ad side, if you feel like you're not getting the service that you want, again, I'm going to love to at least have a conversation with you. There's no guarantee that I'm going to be able to help you, but maybe I can give you some additional insight. Maybe there's something that we can do for you. We can talk about that. You can also find me on LinkedIn and on X, and I do an AMA once a month that does talks about all things Amazon.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael. I think it's really interesting to see some of those case studies, how much of a drastic change being exposed to all ad types has on conversion rate. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for me. We have one question here that was just added in the chat. I don't know if you can pull these up live, no worries if not, but would be great to see some or hear some examples of those product detail page changes you mentioned that helped with customer satisfaction.
I don't know if that was honestly some of it we've done just recently, so I'd have to see if they're live. I'll see if I can find them. But basically, the product that we were looking for, or that we're looking at, the mechanism in the product that was being used was for action in this product. It was a little bit. It had a weird noise to it, but it's based on the texture of the product, and so it was very normal. And so we've just basically said we're using 3D renders as the first image for this product, and we tested just normal product images in 3D renders. We did an experiment on Amazon. They outperformed, I think, like 50% better. And then on the text pieces of the infographics that we're presenting, we're framing things in a little bit different perspective, saying, hey, this product is made of this material, which will cause a little bit of scratchiness. That's very normal, and it will wear away over time. I would rather lose a sale for a brand that's going to result in negative feedback, or which is going to drive down the overall conversion rate of the product, and get a sale from someone who's willing to say, okay, now I know what's going on. And when they get the product, they're like, okay, well, I know that that's going to happen, so I at least paid attention. We're putting it up further in the media asset section, so not burying it in the back, but really trying to be open about it. And to me, that's like, if someone tells me, hey, 5 minutes down the road when you leave, you're going to hit traffic, I've had expectations set for me. I'm going to be maybe less pissed when I hit that traffic. If I have no idea and I didn't leave on time and now I'm hitting traffic, I'm probably going to be frustrated. And so I think it comes to that with relationships with clients. It comes to that when you're a brand with your customer. Setting those expectations is huge. And if you don't set expectations, people get to set their own. And that's not what I would be wanting as a brand. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. If there's any other questions for Michael, go ahead and add them in the Q&A. We've got just about a minute left here. Michael, while we're waiting for any last questions, maybe do you have, summarize your thoughts on today? What is the one thing that a brand should take away from your presentation? Should they go launch some new sponsored display campaigns? Should they sit back and reevaluate their entire goals? What's the one thing they should do right when we finish here?
I was trying to think of some smart ass thing to say, but I'll just go with something that I think is more legitimate. I think that there should one thing I would like people to walk away from this is with hope that there are options with sponsored brands and sponsored display. The limitations on what you're targeting comes down to how willing you are to be creative. So some of the stuff that comes up, I get it, something from an ad account executive at Amazon. We have a great one with that first brand. Her name's Alex. She's been super helpful. And she's like, hey, look at this. Like there's spend that's happening that's not, it's going prioritized towards this. She was someone else that confirmed, what Ryan, what you guys were able to confirm with me as well. And so we've leaned into that, and it's helped us to really grow this brand in this category. But it also took some creative thinking on my part to say, okay, what types do I want to use? How do I want to bring this in? And what does it visually look like? And also, what is my brand looking like? What is my brand looking for when it comes to these? Where do they want to show up? Like they're seeing a competitor. Oh, we're not showing up on this page for the competitor. How do we do that? That's something that I'm thinking about as well. But I just say have hope for these ad types and really start experimenting more. I'm not saying, let's say you've got 20 grand to spend on ads. I'm not saying dump half your budget in experimentation, but try some tests, knowing that there's a lower CPC on average for sponsored display and sponsored brands, category dependent. Try some things and test some things and see how well they work, and then accelerate. That's the benefit, I think, of using some of these ad types is there's a little bit less competition than sponsored products. And so you can experiment with some of the stuff like you used to be able to do with sponsored products, whereas now it feels like you kind of have to come out, really hard and fast on those.
Yeah. Awesome. Test and learn. That's the motto of today. So even if you've tested in the past, know that Amazon's not staying still. Things are changing constantly, and it's worth another look specifically with sponsored display and sponsored brands.
There was one more question that says, does every seller get a designated ad rep, or is there a minimum to meet for that? I don't have an exact minimum, but there's definitely a required amount of spend in order to get those ad execs. What I would say is if you are an agency or your brand that's not really fully ramped on Amazon, if you're willing to say, hey, I'm willing to commit this amount of spend, they're more likely to give you some kind of focus there, or give you some kind of resources because they want you to be successful coming out of the platform, and that's good PR for them. So
yeah. And I'll add to that, working with a partner can be a way to get access to Amazon, or even attending Amazon Accelerate, which is an annual seller-focused conference that Amazon hosts every year. I think it's in September this year in Seattle. I believe it's also free to register and attend. So if you're looking to rub elbows with some Amazonians, it's a good place to be.
And yeah, get to see the Space Needle. And
yeah,
you won't see Bezos because I think he's in Florida now, but
he's in space.
He's in space. Excuse me. That's what I meant to say.
What's the Amazon event? Yeah, the Amazon event coming up in Seattle. It's called Amazon Accelerate. It's an annual conference that Amazon hosts every year. I'm not sure if they've released any details for this year's event quite yet, but you should hear about it soon. So start Googling Amazon Accelerate 2024 and you should see it. I believe it's going to be in September.
17th through the 19th, 2024. Save the day.
There you go.
The problems with fees, Dharmesh Mehta will be there, and you can talk to him there. Say, hey, here's my problem with your fees in person if you want. It is a cool event for sellers. You get an opportunity to go to the seller cafe and talk with someone in person that's not just a generic seller support person. I think Amazon does a good job of putting this event on. They have some cool talks and they announce new stuff there, which I think is it'd be a good time to attend it. It really is for how expensive some of the shows are. I don't know about sellers per se, but I think even if you are, I mean, you have to be a seller to attend, but I think it's only a couple $100. I don't know. Maybe it could be for some, but it
was either $500 or it was free last year. I can't remember, but it's definitely a cheaper conference.
It's not $4,000 if that's what you're used to paying.
You do have to travel to Seattle, though. I mean, Seattle's a beautiful city, but it is expensive.
Yes. I have family there, so I get to stay with my family when I go, and they make food for me, and I get very well taken care of. So if you want to join me, I might be able to help you get a room with my family there.
All right. You got to message Michael on LinkedIn if you're going to Accelerate. That's the plan. Michael, thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. Thank you to all of our attendees. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but if you have any other questions for Michael, you know how to get in touch with him, and we will be sharing the recording, like I mentioned, next week. So be on the lookout for that. Share it with your teams. And thank you again, Michael. It's been great
Thanks for
hosting you.
having me. I'm excited to be here and happy to share this information, and hopefully people get some new insight and can go out and explore. And like I said, feel free to reach out to me and just have a conversation about the ad side of things.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Have a good day.